Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is a trailblazer in the music industry. Elaine Bomberry has been working behind the scenes, promoting music by Indigenous artists for at least 3 decades. Elaine, along with Buffy St. Marie and Curtis Shingoose Johnny, helped create what is now the Indigenous Music Juno Award category. She is an award-winning radio and television producer and the mind behind Rez Bluez, a concert series that became an award-winning variety show on APTN. Elaine is also the manager and partner of Juno Award-winning Mohawk Blues piano man Murray Porter. Elaine, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. You have such a distinguished career in the music industry. Was music always one of your loves?
Always, always. There was always all kinds of music being played in my house, you know, from Jose Feliciano to Hank Sr. to Patsy Cline to B.B. King. So my parents just loved all kinds of music, so I was very honored. And something I don't say very often, but as a child I used to play, I took violin lessons from grade 3 to grade 10.
Yeah.
But it's buried back here somewhere, but yeah.
Never kept up with it?
No. I'm being pressured lately by some friends. Oh, who knows, who knows. But before I go, I want to play the Orange Blossom Special.
Have your musical styles, tastes changed over the years?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, growing up, I never really heard reggae music either, and when I heard that, I just really struck a deep chord with me, and I just love that music. And of course, I grew up kind of despising country music because it was used as punishment. Yeah,
I know that feeling.
4 kids in the car, put on an 8-track of Hank Sr., boom, you're out in 5 minutes, right? Instead of being rowdy kids. And it wasn't until later, again, a teenager, that I really grew to appreciate country music as well. Now I love country music, of course.
Yeah, it's only been the last couple of years that I've come back around to it. But,
oh, yeah?
Yeah, it used to irritate me as well.
It's an age thing, I think.
Yeah. So you've been a manager, a producer, and much more during your career. When you first started out, were there any Indigenous people in those roles? Someone that you had to look up to?
Not in behind the scenes, you know, not behind the scenes, but I'm fortunate that our parents, again, like they loved music so much that when they'd hear of an Indigenous performer on television, like Johnny Snow, seeing him on CBC, and also at the folk festival circuit. Mm-hmm. They had, back in the day, there was Buffy St. Marie, Tom Jackson, Paul Ritchie, Alaniso Buntswin, Shingoose. We're all touring together, so we actually followed them in Ontario, the different folk festivals that they went to. So that was really cool, and then later on to become, you know, colleagues with them and friends was really pretty cool.
Back then, the artists that you mentioned, you know, that was a real renaissance of a time for some of those acts and for Indigenous music.
Oh, for sure, and just seeing that we can create our own music, and but the, what do you call that? The signature moment that goes off in your head that says, "Oh my God, we can do this." We see Redbone play on the Midnight Special. I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I said, "Indians can play rock and roll," you know. And watching that show, it just was a big moment for me in my head, going, well, we can do this too. So,
given that there wasn't, you know, people for you to look up to, or a lot of Indigenous people behind the scenes at the time, do you feel that you faced some challenges that others may not have?
Oh, for sure. You know, because sometimes it's just you're wondering, do I really fit in this? Do we belong here? You know, because there was really no space for Indigenous musics within the larger music industry, you know. So it was just like with people like Buffy St. Marie, you know, breaking down those doors and recording, and Shingoose, you know, Tom Jackson, they all really kicked that door wide open, you know. So it was an honor to be, you know, once they opened the door, to be coming behind them and helping other artists as well.
Do you recall any of those specific challenges you might have faced?
Specific. Well, when the Junos first started, you know, I was a judge, and when you're a judge for the Junos, you can't say you're a judge. You write a confidentiality agreement, and I just felt that you know, our music didn't belong anywhere, and so that was the creation of the category. From there, I was asked to be on the. It was then called, I believe, Roots or Global or World Beat. I can't remember, but the chair of the category at the time, Ann McKeegan, invited me to be on the committee, and she says, well, what do you think? Because at that time, that's when Cashton was part of the category and Seventh Fire Band. And I was sitting there frustrated in there amongst ska and reggae artists and other folk artists. I said, our music doesn't belong here, it doesn't belong there. And then that's how I managed to create the category with the president of the Academy at the time encouraged me, so she gave me some great words on what to do. So.
And we're definitely going to touch on that in a little bit.
Okay.
I do want to ask you, though, do you think that, you know, a lot of people, when they think of a career in the music scene, they want to be on the stage or you know, in entertainment in front of the camera, stuff like that. But clearly, behind the scenes, there's a lot of opportunities there as well.
Oh, for sure. You know, and that's how you make a rounded-out movement, is by having, you know, our own people sitting at those boards in the studio, you know, and producing and being engineers, studio engineers, you know, and all of that, being marketing people, graphic design, everything. You know, we need makeup people too, you know, and it crosses the board in theater and film as well, and television. I worked in those areas as well, so. You know, it's happening in the different fields, which is so wonderful to see more stage managers, you know, in theater, and, you know, so it's happening. It's a whole movement across the country.
Obviously, you've seen a shift and more people getting involved behind the scenes. Was there a moment that sticks out to you of when you started to see that change?
It was gradual. You know, it was gradual as Indigenous theater came through in Toronto. I was fortunate to have worked with Thompson Highway on the original production of the Rez Sisters, and he spoke about that, you know, and also having playwrights, you know, and I remember him saying, you know, once he got Rez Sisters published, I want to see a whole library full, and now there is. You know, our playwrights are getting published, our writers are getting published more, and self-publishing as well. So, you know, we're really taking the bull by the horns, I think, you know. And I think technology has made things easier too for us to self-produce our own music and publish our own books, and yeah.
Well, Elaine, you touched on the Junos, and as we mentioned off the top, you are a trailblazer when it comes to that, and we're going to talk more about the Junos, but first we've got to take a quick break here on Face to Face, and then we'll continue our conversation with Elaine Bomberry. Stick around.
I think that maybe this Juno needs to live with Elaine Bomberry here in Vancouver. So Elaine, this is for you.
And she's messaged me, Buffy won. I said, oh, cool, cool. And then she goes, she dedicated it to you. I went, what? Surreal, surreal. I was like pitching myself.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Elaine Bomberry, a real trailblazer in the music industry. And Elaine, that was Buffy St. Marie dedicating her 2018 Indigenous Album of the Year, Juno, to you. And she did really present it to you as well, I understand, after. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was just amazing when that award was given, because it's the Indigenous Juno's given during the gala dinner, which is the day before the actual broadcast. So I was at a friend's house in North Vancouver, Renee Morrisseau's, and we're all playing music. Everyone's playing, not me playing music, everyone's playing music and just having a good old time. Then all of a sudden my phone started buzzing off the wall. Like I think Jackie Black was the first one, said that she that Buffy dedicated her Juno to me, and I was just like, I was absolutely floored. I couldn't believe it, and I was like, is this for real? You know, because we had started the category all those years before, 25 years before, and so they call it a full circle moment, you know. Yeah, it just totally caught me off guard. And they started crying.
I would imagine most people would feel that type of emotion. You know, you, Buffy, Shingoose, helped create the what is now the Indigenous Music Award, Juno. How did that come to be?
That's just like referred to it quickly about being a judge, and then when you're a judge, you can't say you're a judge. You don't affect the criteria. So I was invited to be on the category, which was then global or world, I can't remember. And then that's when I felt the frustration, about our music not fitting anywhere. And Daisy Fall, who was the president of the Academy at the time, was sitting beside me, and she leans over and just says, "Start a category. Why don't you start a category?" And that's when I burst out laughing, right? I'm like, yeah, right, start a category. And then she invited me to her office after that meeting and told me what it took to document. I needed to document 15 recordings in the previous year and 15 in the coming year. And this was back in the day of fax machines, before before good old emails and internet. And so at my little house on the Rez, I put the word out, and then my fax machine just started pumping and pumping and pumping. So I was able to document 25 recordings in the previous and 40 in the coming year. So I had a little stack of faxes. And then it was just 2 days before our presentation with Karis that I get a phone call out of the blue from Buffy St. Marie, and I thought someone was joking with me, right? Yeah, right, Buffy's calling me, kind of thing, Yeah. Sure enough, it was her. And her and Shingoose were longtime friends. And she says, "Well, I'm in town, and I hear you're doing this work, and can I be of any help?" And I just went, "Are you kidding me? Of course." So she invited Goose and I to dinner at her hotel in downtown Toronto, and I took all the documentation I needed and showed it to her. And I said, "But before we start, I brought my albums, my Buffy St. Marie albums," and I said, "I have to be a fangirl first," and got her to autograph them. I said, "Okay, that's out of the way." And she goes, "Okay, now let's talk strategy." And I said, "Strategy or not, Buffy, you're the first person to walk in that boardroom. Us underlings will come behind you, It's like that to me was symbolic enough. And so we went in, did our presentation, and she wrote this beautiful essay comparing what was happening with Indigenous music as what was happening with black music in the States, like in the 40s and 50s, So she did that whole comparison. Very eloquent essay, just beautiful. And she did that. And then I did the numbers and showed the letters and everything that I was getting. And they nicely kicked us out of the boardroom for 20 minutes and brought us back in and said, "You've got the category, now you can't say anything for 6 weeks." That was the longest 6 weeks of my life. Yeah, so that's pretty much how it happened.
What do you think the impact has been 25 years later of that category?
Oh, it's diversified, right? Right now it's Indigenous Artist or Group of the Year. It used to be Album of the Year. It used to be Recording of the Year. It's just an evolution. And I feel that, it's needed. We've got that platform for Indigenous musicians. So, and there's also brand new Indigenous awards that are going to be happening this summer. The Summer Solstice Music Indigenous Music Awards are happening on Thursday, June 18th at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa.
Amazing.
So that's brand new. It's like, if anyone complains, "Oh, do we need another music category?" It's like, you're darn right we do. Yeah. Any chance to celebrate our Indigenous musicians.
The Juno nominations are just out, as you know, and in Indigenous acts, this is something that our past guest, Jeremy Dutcher, spoke about last year when he won the award, that, Indigenous music isn't just in a genre, and this year, again, Indigenous acts were shut out of some of those big categories, although we see Tanya Tagaq, Tom Wilson, Nisquay, some of the only artists to receive nominations outside of the Indigenous music category. Do you have thoughts on that?
I think it's wonderful. When you can break through those walls and go on to those larger categories, that's wonderful. You're not pigeonholed as an Indigenous artist to submit in the Indigenous category. You can go in any category, in the crafts or whatever, and if your sales are good enough, you can go into those larger categories.
And this brings us to something that you're in Winnipeg for, and that is a gathering called Indigenous Music is Not a Genre, Indigenous Perspectives on the Music Industry. What's your message that you're bringing with that?
I just want to show that the artist can do anything, that if they're going to play blues, if they're going to do alternative rock or whatever, do it. It doesn't matter. You're not really pigeonholed, but it's up to the artists themselves how they want to label themselves. And if you're going to be in any of those categories or genres, that's cool. It's up to you. And but it's the heart and soul that the artists bring out of what the message that they're sharing. And if they want to or not, that's up to them.
Elaine, we've got to step aside for another quick break, and then we're going to talk about what is really a booming Indigenous music industry right now. So stick around. We'll be continuing our conversation here with Elaine Bomberry on Face to Face.
Did not mean to be so mean. Que el mundo pronto se va a acabar. Falta mucho para pensar, cambiar y analizar. Tenemos que resistir cuando tratan de silenciar. Nuestra voz es a la unión, es a la llave para luchar.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Elaine Bomberry. And Elaine, you're just returning, I guess, you could say, from the International Indigenous Music Summit in New Orleans. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my God, that was Old Home Week. It was such a wonderful time. Only wish my husband and I, Murray Porter, could have stayed the whole duration. But we were able to be there for the welcoming reception, and he showcased later that night. And it was just wonderful to reconnect with all our friends. And we all don't get to see each other a lot. Everyone's so busy doing their own thing. And usually around award season, people will get to see each other. But it was just a wonderful time. And it's about time that we had that dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what happened the rest of the week, but I'm sure I will get briefed very soon about what was happening, because it talked about having some kind of international Indigenous music office, which would be amazing to happen. So.
How important are those gatherings to bring people from around the globe?
Oh, really, really important, because we connect like never before. There were musicians from Australia, New Zealand, Guyana, the Netherlands, and all across North America. A lot of Canadian musicians were down there.
So a lot of friends posting a lot of photos from New Orleans last week.
Oh, yeah.
Made me a little jealous.
Yeah, it was a really, really good time. Yeah, it was wonderful to reconnect and to have the elders there that really guided us, Bambi Kish and Louise as well. There was a number of people just really guiding us and reminding us why we were there, and owning that space there in New Orleans was just a wonderful time.
No better place for a gathering, in my opinion.
A lot of us, it was our first time there, so got to stroll around the French Quarter and see the craziness of the town. It's like, wow.
Yeah, beautiful.
Definitely going to go back.
Elaine, I'd like to get your thoughts on a study, an Indigenous music study that was recently done for APTN that puts that says that the industry is booming right now. Is that something that you've been noticing? For sure.
And I think a study like that is long overdue. There's never been any kind of economic impact study done on the music. And I just hope that data is used in a really, really good way, not only for APTN, but for other people, who want to get, access funding and all of that. So hopefully, it'll have a long shelf life.
The study found about a $78 million contribution every year to the economy, 3,000 people employed in the industry. Is that, are those numbers much more significant than when you first started out?
Very much so, yeah. So it's pretty incredible, those numbers. And I think, there's a few movers and shakers there who really, raise that bar, like Buffy, and Tanya Tagaq, Jeremy Dutcher, who really have been out there and really doing just substantial shows, so it's wonderful. But there's also emerging guys, so that gives them something to look forward to as well.
What do you think needs to be done to keep that momentum going?
I think I would like to see, ideally, more of our community, like our business leaders, our successful business leaders, contribute to the artists, independent artists. Because there's so many, like hardly anyone signed to a label anymore. Like, what's a label? So because, again, of the technology, it's made everything so portable that you can record, you know, in your bedroom, you can record in your garage, you know, you can do that. And I just can only hope that it gives them, you know, a boost. But again, just getting back to the business leaders, I would like to see them invest more in our artists. Like my husband's release, Stand Up, there's not one government funder on there. We were able to secure it through independent businesses in our own community to invest. So that's what I would like to see ideally, rather than always having to depend on a government. You know, once you get if you're not successful with a government grant, it's kind of kicks you, you know, in the stomach. But, you know, I just really want to encourage our business leaders to look more developing and, you know, investing their money in the arts.
Do you think maybe a study like this that shows that there is millions of dollars out there to be made will make some of these people come forward?
It can only help because, you know, that's what they want to see. They want to see those numbers. They want to see those graphs, those charts and everything, and it's all there.
We spoke about, you know, how you're behind the scenes, but you're also starting to do some songwriting on as well lately.
Yes, lyricist. I write words, I don't write music. Yeah, the ultimate compliment I got was from my husband. He called me his Bernie Taupin to his Elton John.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's a joke, it's our own little thing, but I write words in the other room and he's in the other room.
Yeah.
And he'll say, "You got anything?" So that's a song I wrote. The Water was exactly like that. And I said, "Well, I got something here. I don't know what it is." I never know what it is till I show him. And then he'll look at it and he says, he can hear something already. So I'm really blessed and honored that my very first words I wrote got put to music by Murray Porter. So
no kidding.
I'm pretty lucky.
What, after all these years, finally made you put pen to paper?
I don't know. It woke me up in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, just these words. This is when I was still living in Six Nations, you know, a song called Call You Baby. And it just, I don't know, I couldn't explain it. It just, something made me wake up and I went to my laptop and I wrote down the whole thing in like 5 minutes and showed it to him and he never changed a word and kept it all. And I was like, wow. So I've been writing. I got a little file that he hasn't even seen what's in there yet. So.
Right. It was the calling late in the night.
I don't know, I guess so. Now I'm proud to say I'm a member of SOCAN. You know, I get tiny little royalty checks, but anyway.
Well, Elaine, we're happy to hear that you're doing some songwriting, maybe inspire some others to...
Yeah, you can do it.
Elaine, a real pleasure to have you here on the show, and
Thank
you for all the contributions that you've given to the music industry over the year.
I just want to say a big shout out to my family, the Bomberry Patch, Fourth Line, and the Porters. I had to do it.
Excellent. Nope, of course, we're happy that you did. Elaine, again, our thanks to you for joining us today, and that is all the time we have for the show. We're always looking for new guests, so if you have any suggestions, please email us at news@aptn.ca. This show and past episodes are all available as podcasts, and you can find those at aptnnews.ca/face-to-face podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dennis Ward. We'll see you next week.